Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I think one of the byproducts of capitalism is individualism. And like anything else that's pushed to an extreme has usually bad consequences. In this case, an extreme individualism gets to selfishness. And selfishness is really the ability to think but only about your own interest and react only when your interest dictates. And that, I think, limits, to a certain extent, the ability to think abstractly and think of someone else, as long as your interest is not benefiting out of that. Or maybe, the byproduct or the consequence is negative, therefore you're gonna act. I think this is one of the problems with the Russian leadership, that is incapable yet of moving the societies in the West, the capitalist societies, as much as they are capitalist, into noticing that actually they are working against their own interest, which is their own livelihood, their lifestyle level of wealth that they used to have, and the consequences could be seen by the decision made by their politicians, the so-called leaders. Actually, they're employees in a democratic system, because that's what they are. They are your elected officials. You elect them as employees to work for you, for your interests. I don't know if you have ever met individuals who act only when something affects them. So otherwise they have no opinion on that issue, good or bad. Like, for instance, let's say you have a person who doesn't care if outside there's a rape in progress. Why? Because he or she is not involved in that, and he doesn't benefit out of that. That is, doesn't hurt him or her, or doesn't get any benefit, something positive out of it. So he doesn't really care. He's watching his television. Therefore, if someone would be trying to rape the person, then the person would immediately realize that, hey, that's bad, we should do something about it. I think the Russians are having a hard time to move certain kind of people from our society to get them realize that the employees' support for the war that occurs in Ukraine affects them. And because the effects are not felt immediately, but it's most of us don't feel it. It's just a mild, slow projection going down with our standard of living, I'm talking. And in the future, our children, grandchildren will have a hard life, or harder than we had, not only but also because of what's going on in Ukraine. That is, the money that goes over there, the support that going over there, the international relationships between countries being really, really severed and broken. So the Russians here, we have Medvedev, and not only, a lot of Russian employees, leaders, however you want to call them, doesn't really matter, the guy is in charge. They made a lot of statements, but the population here, for instance in the United States of America, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but I see how people react to what's going on over there. More this and more that. I read also opinion polls, and for the most part, people are still okay or don't really care what's going on in Ukraine. Why? Because it doesn't affect them directly. And they can't even think abstractly and say, hey, wait a second, what is that? What's going on? What is that good? Is that bad? What are going to be the consequences? Not only for me, which I don't feel them right now, but I don't know, in the long run. So the Russians, they call it here, they threaten. But the Russians merely, in my assessment, say, hey guys, this is what's going to happen, this is what we are willing to do, and that's going to affect you. Obviously, these are words. So a person who watches, let's say, TV and watches that idiotic program The View or other like that, Colbert and other clowns, these guys are Russians. Why? I don't feel anything what these guys are saying. It doesn't hurt me yet. So we have Medvedev today actually coming out and making some claims that I think they should be very concerning for anyone, not only who lives in the so-called West, but direct participants in the war countries I'm talking about, which is most of the Europeans and United States and Canada. And this is what Medvedev lays out. I don't want to call it as a threat. Because for them it's not a threat. For them it's like, guys, right now is midnight. Sometime morning is gonna come, and then it's gonna be the daylight. So that's what he's threatening. There's gonna be the daylight. No, he merely tells you or tells us it's gonna happen. It's the normal course of the events. So let's see what he says here. And this is not only his statement or his opinion on these kind of things. It's the Russian leadership, the guys in charge of, still 7,000 nuclear warheads. So Russia's Medvedev says standoff with West to last decades. Ukraine conflict, quote unquote, permanent. Now, for us who do not feel anything yet, we say lasts decades. So what? Same old same. We don't see it. We don't feel anything. I don't feel anything wrong. A little bit the prices go up, but that's not a big deal. They don't understand that this is going to be possibly accelerated in some negative directions and so on. But since I don't feel anything, these are just words. And the word permanent here, I'm thinking, permanent of whatever happens right now, that means I'm okay. So what are you talking about? The inability to abstractly analyze this or deeper analyzing this, even taking yourself out of it. I'm going to be hurt by this, or what is a permanent war over there? So these words don't have an effect on the citizens. They take it as the mass media gives it to them. Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's former president, has warned that Moscow's confrontation with the West will last decades, and that its conflict with Ukraine could become permanent. For most people, these are empty words. For people who think deeper, say, what do you mean decades? What do you mean could become permanent? What is that? You should get alarmed. But if you still have your beer and the TV show The View or the stupid games on the TV, I think everything is fine. Now, Medvedev, once seen in the West as liberal modernizer, has emerged as one of Russia's most outspoken hawks since Moscow launched what it called a special military operation in Ukraine last year. Now, deputy head of the Security Council, his views reflect some of the thinking at the Kremlin's top level, according to Russian officials. In an article for the government's Rossiyskaya Gazeta newspaper, he said tensions between Russia and the West were much worse than during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, when the world teetered on the edge of nuclear conflagration. A nuclear war was, and I'm quoting, quite probable, but was unlikely to have any winners, said Medvedev, who has repeatedly said Western support for Ukraine increases the chances of nuclear conflict. And he says again, one thing that politicians of all stripes do not like to admit, such an apocalypse is not only possible, but also quite probable. Isn't this enough to get someone off his couch and TV, put the remote control down, and do something about it? Probable. Again, Western analysts cast that they say is Medvedev nuclear saber rattling. So, basically ignore the crazy. He's just, making affirmations because he has nothing else to do, as a tactic aimed at frightening the West to reduce military support for Ukraine and to instead lean on Kiev to start peace talks with Moscow. So Reuters, with this right here, and using it like this, tries to dismantle everything this guy said here. Hey, it's quite probable. Don't pay attention to Medvedev. Oh, it's okay. Oh, it could last years, or become what I say here, the confirmation, decades. Could last decades, or could become permanent. Well, all these things are destroyed by that little thing right here. Well, the Western analysts, which are experts. Therefore, go and watch your TV, go and drink your beer, definitely go to work for some and for others. Make sure that those taxes are taken and distributed not to you, obviously. As I said, consume shit, garbage, eat garbage, because what we eat, who knows what is in that. We know it's not good, but anyway. And most of all, keep your mouth shut. All right? Basically, this is what you are required to do, and then you will be called Mr. Good Citizen. Now, as I said, my life is good. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to do this. I don't need to speak out. I don't need to do anything. My life is good. But if I do like that, I'll be like everybody around. So get involved, my friends. And not only you. It's just how, from my interpretation of what's going on, you have these guys making, I would say, important statements. You got the mass media, the free mass media, interpreting it however they want. They manufacture it as just clowns. Just be obedient consumers, and that's it. And that's not what it is. It's a real thing occurring over there. And because it doesn't affect us directly, you don't hear bullets flying around. Yeah, let's send about $20 more billion to Ukraine. Yeah, send them, whatever, man. Don't bother me. I'm switching channels here. That's bad. It's always been like that because, the masses are as they are. But I think it's dangerous when these guys are making these kind of claims, the mass media downplays them, and you just believe these guys or don't even care about what the other guys said and think for yourselves and say, wait a minute, let's take a look at this. Is it possible? Probable? What are going to be the consequences? Then we have a big problem. So yeah, this is my problem with the whole, the way I see it, the cycle. The media filtrates and turns things the way they want to keep us, calm and obedient, and sometimes outraged, the 5 minutes of rage and hate when they give us something to hate, usually ourselves, so they can do that hanky-panky there. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.